Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into something that's keeping European enterprise leaders up at night: AI governance and readiness for 2026. Sam, we're talking about this moment where regulation, technology, and business strategy all collide. Why is this conversation so urgent right now?
Great question, Alex. The EU AI Act enforcement timeline is tightening, and we're not talking about a distant deadline anymore. Organizations across Europe need to understand that 2026 is a watershed moment where governance moves from being a compliance checkbox to a genuine competitive advantage. The stakes are real. We're looking at penalties up to $30 million or 6% of global revenue for non-compliance.
Those are eye-watering numbers. But let me ask you this. For the enterprises listening who are already deploying AI, whether it's voice agents for customer service or chatbots, how urgent does this actually feel to them right now?
Here's what's interesting. According to PwC's 2024 Global AI study, 59% of European executives cite regulatory compliance as their primary governance concern. But what we're seeing in practice is a disconnect. They're worried about it, but they're not necessarily acting on it yet. Many organizations are still in that mindset of bolting compliance on after the fact, rather than building it into their architecture from day one.
So there's anxiety without action. What's the real business case for getting ahead of this? Is it purely defensive, or is there offensive upside too?
Absolutely offensive upside. McKinsey found that enterprises with mature AI governance frameworks achieved 40% faster time to market for AI initiatives and 35% higher ROI on investments. That's not a compliance story, that's a performance story. Clear decision-making authority, documented risk frameworks, resource allocation clarity, these things accelerate everything.
Now that's compelling. You're saying the organizations that get governance right actually move faster, not slower. That's counterintuitive for a lot of people. Let's dig into what readiness actually means, because I suspect a lot of organizations think it's just about having the right technology stack.
That's exactly the misconception we need to break. Gartner's 2024 Chief Data Officer Survey found that only 32% of enterprises report high readiness across all 5 dimensions, and those 5 dimensions are strategic alignment, data architecture, talent and capability, governance and risk, and infrastructure and technology. Notice how 4 out of 5 have nothing to do with hardware.
Walk me through what that actually looks like in practice. If I'm a mid-market manufacturer in Germany and I'm thinking about deploying AI in my supply chain, where do I start?
You start with strategic clarity. What business outcome are you actually trying to achieve? Not, we want to use AI, but we want to reduce lead times by 15% and cut waste by 8%. Then you work backward. Do you have clean data pipelines? Do you have the internal talent? Or do you need external expertise? Do you have a governance structure that can actually review and approve these systems? And only then do you think about the infrastructure.
That sounds like it requires different disciplines coming together: business strategy, data engineering, legal, compliance. How do organizations typically structure that conversation?
The best ones treat readiness assessment as a diagnostic exercise. You're interviewing stakeholders across business, technology, legal, and compliance. You're documenting what you have today versus what you need. You're mapping regulatory dependencies, so if you're deploying high-risk AI systems like voice agents for hiring decisions or content moderation, you know exactly what EU AI Act requirements apply to you.
Let's talk about high-risk systems specifically. That's where things get really concrete. You mentioned voice agents, chatbots, marketing automation. Why do these specifically trigger regulatory attention?
Because they have direct impact on people's lives and decisions. A voice agent handling customer service might make decisions about routing calls, escalations, or resolution authority. A chatbot handling inquiries might be classifying customers for targeted marketing or credit decisions. That's where AI intersects with fundamental rights or economic impact, and that's what the EU Act cares about most.
So the framework forces you to think carefully about bias, transparency, and accountability in these systems. That's not a box to check. That's genuine risk management.
Exactly. And here's what's really smart about getting ahead of it. Organizations that build transparency and auditability into their systems from the beginning don't have to retrofit later. If your voice agent is logging decision logic, if your chatbot is tracking its confidence scores and escalation triggers, if your marketing automation is documenting the data it used for targeting, compliance becomes almost automatic.
That sounds efficient. But practically speaking, how do organizations move from assessment to actual implementation? What's the roadmap look like?
You're building on those 5 dimensions simultaneously, but with clear sequencing. First, you establish governance structures and ethical review processes. That's not infrastructure heavy. It's documentation, decision rights, and accountability. Second, you audit and upgrade your data architecture for quality, lineage, and ethical governance. Third, you build or hire for talent gaps, governance officers, ethics-focused roles, cross-functional AI literacy.
And all of that happens before you're even thinking about scaling the technology?
Well, in parallel with the technology, but the governance and talent work has to lead. Because here's what Gartner found. Organizations that excel across all 5 dimensions move from pilot to production at 3x the speed of peers. You're not slowing down. You're removing the friction that derails most projects.
Let's talk about specific sectors for a moment. You mentioned financial services, automotive, pharma as organizations that are moving fast. Why are those sectors ahead of the curve?
Regulation. Those sectors are used to governance-heavy environments. A bank has compliance departments, risk frameworks, documentation discipline. When AI governance gets added to the mix, they see it as another layer in a system they already understand. They don't have to build that muscle from scratch like a retail or manufacturing organization might.
So there's actually an advantage to being regulated. You've already got the discipline and the mindset.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Other sectors are catching up fast. We're seeing real momentum in innovation hubs like Eindhoven, Berlin, Paris. Organizations are conducting readiness assessments now, mapping their regulatory dependencies, and building compliance into their AI architecture. That first mover advantage won't last long.
So for someone listening who's in a less regulated industry and maybe feeling a bit behind, what's the honest advice? Is 2026 realistic as a target for being governance ready?
It depends on your starting point and scope. If you're piloting a single chatbot and you have basic governance structures in place, absolutely. If you're a complex organization deploying AI across 10 different business units with different risk profiles, you're looking at a multi-year journey. But waiting for perfection is the wrong move. Start now with a clear assessment. Pick your highest risk systems to govern first and build momentum.
That's the practical reality, isn't it? Not perfect compliance by 2026, but genuine readiness and momentum toward it.
Right. And the organizations that frame it as, how do we build AI governance as a competitive advantage, rather than, how do we avoid a fine, will actually come out ahead. Because mature governance isn't a cost center, it's an enabler.
Sam, if someone's listening and they want to go deeper into this, frameworks, methodologies, specific checklist items, where should they go?
We've put together a comprehensive guide on EtherLink.ai that walks through the maturity models, the regulatory landscape, and actual implementation roadmaps. It's designed for enterprise decision-makers, not just compliance teams.
Perfect. So head over to EtherLink.ai to find the full article on AI Governance and Readiness, Enterprise Europe 2026 Guide. You'll find frameworks, benchmarks, and real-world implementation approaches. Thanks for walking through this with us, Sam. For everyone listening, governance isn't a constraint on innovation, it's an accelerant. That's what we're learning across Europe right now.
Absolutely. And if you're building or deploying AI systems, now's the time to think about governance as part of your competitive strategy, not something you bolt on later. Thanks for having me, Alex.
This has been EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more on enterprise AI strategy. Until then, keep thinking about how to build smarter.